doesn't matter. I love you.
Too late. I don't love you anymore. Goodbye.
Today on LitePsych, we're going to talk about breakups, what it means when you talk about your breakups online, and how it shows whether you move on or not. If there's one thing we can be certain of when it comes to breakups, it's that no one wakes up and randomly thinks, today I'm just going to break up with my boyfriend or my girlfriend. Breakups rarely happen out of the blue or just randomly. Most of the time, it is thought of first by someone in the relationship, and often it begins just internally. This is where you reflect about the relationship, whether or not you're still happy, and what are the things that you'd like to derive from it. After an individual reflection, it moves into a dyadic approach where you start talking to your partner about the issues and the reflections that you've thought of. Here, you might pursue solutions to mend the relationship and get back together, or this is where you create fallouts and more problems, which leads to your eventual breakup. Regardless of what happens, but especially if you do end up having a breakup, the next stage is when you create narratives to tell your friends, family, and loved ones on why you broke up and what exactly happened between the two of you as part of the breaking up process. Since at this point, our lives are basically connected to social media, researchers have found a way to study language patterns in social media to spot certain things about our lives. And this has been applied to things such as depression, PTSD, and anxiety. On this, researchers have found two general language thinking patterns when it comes to breakups. The first is the analytic thinking. This is your formal, logical, left brain side, which is very calculated. This way of thinking is often viewed as cold, and it helps us explain and understand something that is very complex. This is when we view relationships like a problem to solve, and we approach it with a reasoned point of view. In analytic thinking, there are more use of pronouns, prepositions, articles, auxiliary verbs, negations, conjunctions, and non-referential adverbs. Words which basically detach you so that you can analyze the relationship more objectively. The second language thinking pattern is cognitive processing or walking through. This is when we try to understand something that we have limited information about. In this thinking pattern, language-based markers would be through insight words like understand, meaning, causal words, self-discrepancy, or modal words like would or should. These words give off a sense of uncertainty and it reflects how a person is still trying to make sense of what happened. This also reflects and is connected to how a person may process a traumatic event. Often, after a traumatic event, we have a hard time creating a complete narrative, so we use more cognitive processing or walking through language. When breakups happen, you typically look inwards first to figure out what is it that I did wrong, what could have I done better, how did I approach this situation? And often this leads to rumination and emotional distress. Rumination is when you think about the memory that upsets you and play it over and over and over again in your mind. One way to look at inward focus is through the regular use of first-person singular pronouns or I words. Research has shown that the more I words you use, the less adjusted you are after a breakup. One also thinks about your partner when you're processing what happened over the breakup. Interestingly enough, research has found that the use of we words or first-person plural pronouns shows you about one's relationship commitment, intent you to continue the relationship, and problem-solving behaviors. We words during conflict resolution highlight the interdependence of successful marital relationships. Using we words when you're in conflict reflects that you view the problem as something to be solved with teamwork and as something that takes the two of you to successfully resolve. But what does it mean when you use we words after a breakup? Research has shown that the use of we words after a breakup means that you have yet to distance yourself from your shared identity in your relationship with your partner. Often in a relationship, we have an identity as a couple, and the use of we words reference to that identity as opposed to you just now being single. So with that in mind, researchers look through Reddit, different communities and threads to see how people process and talk about their breakups. Here are their findings. There is an increase of use in I words reflecting more depressive thoughts and an inward focus. Therefore, these people are blaming themselves about what happened to the relationship. There is a drop in analytic or cold, logical thinking and more use of less structured, more personal language. There is an increase in cognitive processing, therefore showing that people are trying to make sense of how it all ended. There is an increase in we words used referencing the fact that they have yet to dissociate from their shared identity as a couple, but cognitive processing and the use of we words go back to normal and baseline after 1 month, while analytic thinking and self-focus goes back to normal in 14 weeks and 10 weeks respectively. This means that even when the person has made sense of why the breakup happened and has dissociated him or herself from the shared identity, he or she is still prone to self-focus and is still using personal and less structured language. Aside from this, researchers also took the time to make sense of what it means when people repeatedly write about their breakups on social media. They found that repeated writing actually has positive implications on mental and physical health. Specifically, expressive writing done 15 minutes for 1 to 4 days can actually help individuals deal with different kinds of problems. This involves writing in a diary, journaling, or writing opinion pieces. However, some studies have also equated writing about your breakups as rumination, therefore making you fixated on something upsetting. If you constantly post about your breakup for a period of over 6 months, studies suggest that you still haven't moved on from the relationship as opposed to someone that has been writing about it but has stopped at the 2-month period. This, however, comes with a disclaimer that researchers understand that there are some bad breakups that may require a little bit more processing and a little bit more expressive writing just because of the nature of the relationship or how it all ended. However, in general, researchers believe that writing more just made moving on more difficult. These findings also apply to divorce, as breakups and divorce in general share very similar characteristics and circumstances. However, it is different for individuals who experience trauma or major conflict in the family as well as any major upheaval. This is because some conflicts within the areas I've mentioned don't necessarily need meaning making, and these areas don't necessarily make references or directly connect to just one person as it would in a breakup or a divorce. So what have we learned from all of this, and what are the things that we should look out for? Before an actual breakup, there is a drop in analytic thinking, possibly because he or she can already see the end of the relationship. When breakups do occur, language spikes in cognitive processing, and as the story and the coherence develops, the organized analytic thinking follows suit. When it comes to writing about breakups, it may be a form of rumination, although there is some value to it in the short term, but the research recognizes that for especially toxic and especially bad breakups, it may be a form of coping that people use. So what does this mean for you and me? On the one hand, it makes us be more aware of ourselves, especially knowing that even 3 months before the breakup, our language patterns already change. It also becomes a tool for us to look out for the people that we care about, especially our friends and best friends, whenever they're dealing with problems in their romantic relationships. The greatest takeaway here is that on one end, our real lives are actually reflected on social media and can be a barometer of how we're doing in our day-to-day life. Follow us at LitePsych on Instagram and hit the subscribe and bell notifications so you never miss out on the latest psychology and simple terminology. This is Jim. Thanks for watching.